So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who has joined us today. And today we are going to talk about something which is very, very spectacular in terms of even thinking about it, which is Hamas, hostages, and IDF in the same line. And talking about what more than, 650 days or 20 months of the ongoing repercussions of October 7 have really created the nuances for Israel, for Gaza, for West Bank, and the neighboring countries. And for that, we have Colonel Rajeev Agarwal with us. He's a military veteran, and he is also senior research consultant at Chintan Research Foundation, New Delhi. So with this, welcome to our talk today, and thank you for the privilege of your time.
Thank you, Dr. Shubhta, and always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So my first question to you is, like, if we take all these topics one by one, on 7th of October 2023, there were 600 members of Hamas or militants of Hamas, those also including around 3,800 from the elite Nukba forces, then Qasim brigades and others. They launched a coordinated attack at Israel at 119 locations, especially Gaza-Israel border. They targeted military bases, they targeted the civilian communities, and that killed around 1,200 Israeli civilians. 21 communities were massacred, especially the kibbutz of Beri, Kfar Aza, Nir Oz. Victims included women, children, infants, foreign workers. The Nova Music Festival, there were almost 360 people who were killed. How do you see this particular chapter now 20 months ahead of it?
Dr. Shubhta, this was a chapter which really, shook the conscience of each and every Israeli citizen, and obviously the government which is in charge, because this was absolutely unprecedented, and both the scale and the scope of the attack was something that, it could not have been accepted. And I recall one of the conversations that I had, I was in Israel for past 1 week, and we were taken as an official delegation to see all these places that you have just mentioned, which happened on 7th October. So just to understand the scale of what happened, they equated it with Israeli population versus our population. And they said, sir, if, 1,140 casualties have to be equated at a population scale, to imagine the kind of, revenge and raw, emotion that would invoke. He said, as per your population, it would have meant killing of 200,000 people in 1 day or a few hours. So that is the kind of, scale at which they see it. And obviously, for anyone of us in, any part of the world, this was an unprecedented act, and Hamas had been known for launching rocket attacks, carrying out skirmishes, small raids across the Gaza border. This was huge. So act of revenge which Israel took upon itself on 7th October after being initially overwhelmed and surprised was absolutely, in line with what any nation would have done. However, what happened a few days down the line, a few weeks down the line, that is where I think, Israel went somewhere wrong, and that is how it is standing where it is right now at 20 months down the line.
And when you went to Israel and you also went to the kibbutz area, you also saw the road parallel to the Gaza border. Yeah. So what was the condition, though you cannot see Gaza, but at the border, what was the condition at that point of time?
No, so we were at an outpost, an elevated outpost, and we could see the Gaza fence. We could see with binoculars, some kind of movement across the devastated buildings. We could see the RT shells falling and the smoke rising, the sounds of RT shell being fired from behind us. So they were quite prominent. I mean, you could not see exactly, but you could feel the kind of activity that was going on across into Gaza.
So is it only from the Israeli side or also from the Hamas side that these kinds of activities continue till today?
See, Hamas, the major part of its military capability has been demolished. The senior leadership has been wiped out. We know all the leaders who have been eliminated. And the battalions, 14 or 18, whichever were in the numbers, they have been, demolished in the sense that they do not exist as a strength of a battalion, which Hamas was organized earlier. But what people are not understanding, and even in Israel, they are not understanding that Hamas is very good at adapting to guerrilla tactics. And so if you see in last 2 weeks itself, I have documented it in my, article, which I wrote in Economic Times yesterday. Israel has been, IDF has been suffering casualties which are not there earlier. 4 soldiers eliminated in one go, 5 eliminated in one go. So, because fighting in built-up area against a well-entrenched adversary who's, launching attacks through guerrilla tactics in very, very small teams, or even sometimes a single person launching a grenade or, throwing up an ID. A conventional army, it's very difficult to take that into account. And I have operated in JNK. I know how these people operate, whether it is Hamas or LET or JIM, all are, the same thing only. So it is a difficult situation. And that is why I said that Israel will have to take a decision sooner than later, whether they want to keep going on after each and every Hamas Carter up to the last man standing, and keep incurring the casualties that they are incurring in the IDF, or they leave Hamas at such a depleted state where it is not in a state to launch any major attack here onwards into Israel, and also take step that Hamas is never emboldened or empowered enough to be a force of to reckon with. But to go on with this war of attrition is only, to my mind, detrimental to the cost of lives as far as Israel is concerned.
And Human Rights Watch has also documented that the actions of Hamas, they have been defined as war crimes and crimes against humanity, including murder, hostage taking, wrongful imprisonment. But do you think that Israel would be able to deplete whatever strength of Hamas is left? Because Hamas is not actually a movement, it's an idea. And the number of Palestinians who are maybe getting asylum in France, or they are made to leave to Libya or Sudan, the idea of the ethnic cleansing would continue in their minds. So do you think that Hamas can actually be obliterated by Israel?
That is one of the things that is, which Israel is not able to reconcile. Remember, if you remember, in May 2024, 1 year back, even the chief of army staff had said in a public statement that we have to set realistic military objectives. I am from the military. Military operates on very specifically defined objectives, because if the objective is defined, then you plan for it and execute a military operation. A broad-based objective of obliterating Hamas from the face of the earth, flattening Gaza, a scorched earth policy, these things don't translate into a specified military objective. Coming to the point of what you are saying about Hamas, as per estimates, broad estimates through various agencies, Hamas had about 25 to 30,000 fighters in October 2023. Most of the Western agencies estimate that between 13 to 15,000 Hamas carters may have been eliminated by Israel. Although Israel, in its official documents, say that they have eliminated almost up to 22 to 23,000. But whether it is 15,000 or 23,000, it is immaterial, because what has happened in last 20 months, reports indicate that almost 8 to 10,000 new cadres have been recruited by Hamas. Even the outgoing Secretary of State Blinken said that in January, before the ceasefire came into effect, that, we have to be wary of the fact that Hamas is getting cadres very easily to join its rank. I concede the point that new cadres who are joining Hamas, they are joining in a time of war, and they would not get time, or Hamas would not get time to train them in a way that it had trained its cadre pre-2023 October. But still, a man with a weapon is a threat in itself.
And how do you think, like when you were at What is the condition of these kibbutz as of now? Like, how has been the memory of those lives that were lost on 7th of October? How has Israel commemorated it? And did you meet during your visit any surviving members from the kibbutz? And what was your experience?
So we went to one of the kibbutz, which was one of the most ravaged ones, and we saw how the houses had been damaged by grenades and rockets. We saw some of the houses where huge blood stains are still there, and outside each and every house where the victims are there, they've put large posters remembering the victims of this. And as one of our IDF guide says, that we have to strike a balance between preserving the memories of who they were lost, as also reconstructing new lives, and so reconstructing the infrastructure. So they are trying to strike a balance, but the visuals are quite appalling when you go there. They're still in a bad shape, and I think these things will take time to recover. Very few people have come back to the kibbutz, mostly because of the work and managing the kibbutz. But a majority of the families are still to return back. They're staying away.
And during your visit, there was a very again, unprecedented attack by Qasim brigades in which 5 IDF soldiers were killed.
Yeah.
And what is, how does the shelter system work? And how does the Iron Dome and the siren system work? How are the Israeli civilians notified that there's a threat or there's some bombing going to happen? What is the psychological condition at that point of time?
See, and these are two different aspects. The 5 IDF soldiers who were killed, they were killed in the Gaza Strip while carrying out operations. So there's a ground operation going out in built-up area in a very congested area. So, like I said in the beginning, the threat of Hamas executing such attacks through its guerrilla tactics, emerging from nowhere, emerging from underground tunnels, etc., and inflicting damage is there. And this is one of the questions we asked. Also, how do you match the lives of IDF soldiers lost against the lives of hostages who are alive? And that is a dilemma that they are, still dealing with. As regards the threat of rockets and missiles, not much of threat of rockets coming from Hamas exists as of now. It's basically ground threats which are there against the forces which are operating in Gaza. But yes, once in a while they do get alerts of Houthis launching missile from Yemen, and they have a very well-established system of sirens. Every phone has got a home, what is it called, home command app or something, and every phone just starts going off moment these kind of alerts are sounded. And for them, living even before 7th October, they always had these kind of threats in being. So they have somehow incorporated these threats into their lives. When the sirens sound, they go back, they go into bomb shelters, and if nothing happens, 10 minutes out later, they are all out on the streets and leading their normal lives.
And what, so there's one aspect of talking about the impact of Hamas, but the other aspect was the war between Israel and Iran. During your visit, what kind of remnants of Iranian strike in Tel Aviv or whatever areas you visited, what were the remnants of it?
See, from the reports that we all have read and, analyzed, Iran was able to, land number of missiles into Israel, and especially in the area of Beersheba, where we saw the video shots also coming, a huge amount of damage was done where whole slabs of buildings are blown away. But we were not taken to those sites, but we did see one or two sites in and proximity of Tel Aviv, which had been hit by missiles. There were damages, there were, glasses blown off and those kind of things. But I could not see any building with the kind of damage where, the entire thing has been blown apart and it's become a flattened ground kind of thing. So maybe it was not their intention to show us those kind of places. But we did see one or two places where Iranian missiles had struck.
And now I agree with you completely on when you talk about the condition of the IDF soldiers, especially because most of them are doing double time duty, they are exhausted. The Haredi Jews do not want to be enlisted into
Yeah.
the IDF. More than 1 million Israelis who had dual citizenship, they have left since 7th of October 2023. But if we talk specifically about IDF, as of June 2025, and in July the number is more, but 891 IDF soldiers have been killed. Uh, with 558 deaths, which were only in 2024. More than 50,000 of IDF soldiers in a recent study that came out yesterday have um, post-traumatic stress disorder complaint,
Yeah. Correct.
anxiety and psychological impact of it. The third most important is that a lot of IDF soldiers who are serving in Gaza, they're also dying by suicide because of the PTSD. And lastly, one important factor that Netanyahu government has to take care of is the safety and security of their IDF soldiers when they go outside of Israel. Because there have been incidents where a lot of IDF soldiers have been targeted, they have been clicked, the videos have been clicked, and they have been called out for, taking part in the ethnic cleansing or genocide as called. So how does the IDF, because it's not a homogeneous body, how does the IDF perceive it?
See, IDF is a professional army, so they go by what orders and objectives they are given. Despite the fact that they are fighting a attrition battle, they are fighting a battle where in a built-up area they come up with great odds of threat against their person. They are fighting like a professional force, and IDF is one of the best armies or armed forces that you can come across in the world. But what I have been trying to tell them, and I'm trying to write about it, is that there is a point where the military solution has to give way to a political solution, and asking the military to achieve the political solution that is completely obliterating the Hamas, which you yourself said is an ideology as an idea, is to me a very unrealistic objective to be set for any army, leave alone IDF. And you are giving the statistics, so I had just jotted down some of the statistics. You said rightly, 891 officially declared, IDF casualties in this war. There may be a few more which are not directly related to war, and so they have not been documented. And out of that, if you see, IDF has lost 19 soldiers up to 15th of July, only from 24th of June. That is after the Iran-Israel war ended. Since then, in about 3 weeks, they have lost 19 soldiers. And if you take it slightly back to the point where, 18th March, when the ceasefire was revoked by Israel, and they launched air operations, and on 20th May, they launched ground offensive, they have lost another 23. So that means from the point of revoking the ceasefire, which was unilateral, and somehow I could not fathom why it was revoked. You have already lost 42 soldiers, and many have, like you said, injured. Many have got psychological trauma. And here I would like to emphasize for everyone who's listening to this podcast that not everybody in IDF is a regular soldier. There are thousands and thousands of reservists who have been called up to join the IDF because of the prolonged war and the casualties and the fatigue that is happening. And who are these reservists? These are the people who as youngsters had served in the IDF as conscript, which is mandatory out there, and were leading their normal civilian lives. And now they have been called up. So the psychological and the physical stress on a reservist will be definitely more than a regular soldier who's attuned to that way of life for a number of years. So when you add all that, the people who have been killed, the people who have been injured, the people who are going, mental trauma, people who have been released, and there are a number of soldiers who were released after some time and then again have been brought back once the Iranian war broke out. So IDF is paying a huge price in this war.
So, who do you think, like, how does, were you able to discuss and debate these parameters or these uh, diverging points with the IDF? And, what is their take on the ceasefire? Will it work, or Steve Witkoff or Qatari and Egyptian mediators are just trying to tackle something or achieve something which is impossible?
The IDF would not have a view on it, and if they have a view that is internal, they would not discuss it like any other professional army. I would not discuss in political objective wearing a uniform. So that goes with IDF also. But when we speak to the think tanks, when we speak to the strategic community, when we also speak to some of the officials who are there, for them it is very clear in their mind still today that they cannot have a situation where war ends in Gaza and Hamas still has some governance capability left, and Hamas has not been completely eliminated as far as the combat capabilities there. And when we argue with them that both these things, at least the second one in terms of combat capability, is a very unrealistic, objective, they do not have any answer to it. Also, when we ask them what is the day after scenario that you are imagining, you have to have some objective of a day after, then only can you march towards it. There is no clarity on it because till the time these two objectives are fulfilled, that Hamas is completely eliminated and it does not have any governance, that means some alternate body has to come into the governance of Gaza. They do not see that they can think of a day after. One thing is clear, that Israelis are not in any mood or in any inclination to get into governance of Gaza. They also accept that Palestinian Authority is very fragmented. They do not have the political authority over the various factions to enforce their will upon Hamas, that Hamas has to get out of Gaza and they will impose Palestinian Authority or some interim authority to rule Gaza. So it's a situation which is so vicious and so cloudy that between the two very extreme divergent positions, there is no common ground.
And during your trip, were you able to see, just as at least some part of Gaza? So was there any kind of trip towards West Bank?
No, we didn't go to the West Bank. We did visit Jerusalem, the old city, and we were, shown the beautiful city of Jerusalem and the old, all the history behind it. But we didn't go to the West Bank. We did see parts of the landscape across the Syrian border and across the Lebanese border.
And IDF also, along with the psychological trauma, deaths, and double duty that most of the soldiers are doing, IDF is also the one, I think, that controls any kind of settler violence that goes ahead. Because there's a massive increase in the settler violence in the occupied territories of West Bank. So how is it possible? Who coordinates all of it? Is it completely under the control of the defense minister, Israel Katz, who controls both Shin Bet and IDF, or is it much more nuanced?
I think IDF, I won't have so much of clarity on what you're asking because firstly, we didn't go to the West Bank. And so we didn't see much of what settler violence we are talking about. I know only what we read in the media and the analysis part of it, which you also read. So I won't have too much on it. But what I know of IDF, that Shin Bet, the Internal Security Intelligence Agency, and IDF have very clearly specified roles, and they do coordinate. And IDF does launch operations based on what real-time or specific intelligence that Shin Bet is able to gather. But I don't think that they are intermeshed into a single command. They have their specific, command authorities, and that is how they function.
And talking about Jerusalem, were you able to visit the entire city of Jerusalem or only West Jerusalem?
Sorry?
Were you able to go through, did you have access to the entire city of Jerusalem or just West Jerusalem?
No, we just went to the old city,
Also,
the gated one.
okay. And when we talk about hostages, the few facts about hostages are that on October 7, 2023, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Qasim brigades, they abducted 251 people from southern Israel in the
Correct.
operation that they called Al Aqsa Flood. This included 225 civilians, which included children, women, elderly, foreign nationals, along with 25 soldiers, and there were four pre existing captives.
Yeah, correct.
Nearly half were foreign nationals or dual citizens like American, Thai, Nepali,
Correct.
Argentinian, French, Russian, Portuguese, Chilean, Italian.
Yeah.
There were Negev Bedouins and Thai agricultural workers also included in that. 148 hostages have been returned alive from
Yeah.
251. 105 were released during the November 2023, a very small
Yeah.
the ceasefire that took
One
place.
week cruise.
Yeah.
Correct.
5 were released unilaterally by Hamas outside the ceasefire agreements.
Yeah.
8 were rescued by IDF operations, like, for example, Farhan al Qadi, and 4 in Nusairat. 30 were released during the January to March 2025 ceasefire,
Yeah.
including 5 female soldiers and 5 Thai nationals. 56 bodies have been recovered. Now, if I talk about today, we don't know what is the reality or where the hostages are. But in a hypothetical situation, if we talk about, there are 50 hostages remaining, out of which
Yeah.
27 are confirmed dead.
Yes.
And it is believed that 20 of them are still alive.
Yeah.
Though Israel has doubts about it. How do you understand the perception within Israel regarding the hostages and their families? Because you were also able to meet few of the hostage families.
Yeah. So, Dr. Shubda, there's a very, very strong sentiment as far as hostages are concerned, and it is understandable. So, many people think that hostages have become a political game, as far instrument in the political game that is being played between the Israeli government and what it wants internally, domestically, and how it wants to project its vision in the neighborhood. Whether it is Syria or Lebanon, etc. What we loosely understand as a vision of a greater Israel expanding, on all sides to secure its original borders. So there's a very, very strong sentiment, and we one of the hostage survivors who we met, who was released in the first initial phase in November 23. So an old lady, she narrated her ordeals and how they were captured and how they were kept on very minimal food and conditions which were just enough to keep them alive, and so that they become the bargaining chip. So that thing is there, and I fully understand that. But what is happening is that Israel is not able to reconcile the fact that Hamas will not release the hostages till the time Israel ends the war or agrees to the condition of withdrawal of troops from the Gaza Strip. And also it's a fact that with every week or every day or every month which passes, the 20 will become 19, 19 will become 18, and the probability of rest of the hostages remaining alive will keep going down, both due to health condition as also some of the hostages getting caught in crossfire when more and more battles take place in the built up area. So to my mind, hostages have been made a pawn in the whole political game, and even if none of the hostages alive, Hamas will still not, hand over the bodies till the time, there is some kind of a agreement between the two very, very diverging goalposts that each have set for themselves. And in Israel, one more thing, what we have to understand, which, I mean, it is there in every country or every society, but it is very strong because whatever the Jewish sentiments or culture that are there, that the bodies or even the part of body, or even as they see, even blood stains, have to be recovered in maximum form, whatever, so that complete closure can be given to the families, and that is how the life can then move on. So hypothetically speaking, even if all 20 are killed in due course in next few months, and Hamas does not release those 50 bodies, it'll still be a question of how Israel takes it forward.
That is true, and there are two very interesting developments happening at the same time. One, that Palestinians in Gaza are protesting against Hamas. Hamas has been very autocratic and very dominating, very patriarchal, very feudal in its ways. And anyone who has ever tried to silence or even question, silence is a very wrong term for it, or question any move by Hamas has disappeared. So a lot of Palestinians in Gaza are protesting regarding Hamas and whoever is involved with Hamas. The second thing that is happening is, how do you think that there's no way of aid going to Gaza? There's no way of food or electricity going to Gaza. There's no fuel. Everything is limited. Everything is checked by Israel. The Madleen flotilla was returned. There have been many other attempts to enter Gaza. There's a blockade. How do you think is Hamas getting the fund to survive?
The first part that you said is absolutely a real situation, but also there's a reality beyond this situation where number of people still bank upon Hamas only to, what should I say, save them or give them whatever minimum basic livelihood that is possible or that they think of. And the other factor that I think is for the Palestinians who are staying in Gaza, despite the fact that they're totally frustrated with Hamas, and they know that, they are being caught between the fight of Hamas and IDF, they find that there is no alternative to Hamas. So coming to the aid question, Israel has not permitted any UN humanitarian aid to go in, but they found an alternative. So for last 2 months, what alternative they have found is they have private companies of Israel and private companies of America. They have joined and formed a Gaza humanitarian fund or something like that. And they are being permitted across the Kenan Shalom crossing of Israel, which is being totally monitored and controlled by the IDF. And we had an officer who briefed us on this. Intricate operational network has been set, and they are permitting trucks, sometimes 400, sometimes 600 to enter. But initially what happened, the trucks used to enter and the Hamas used to take over, loot the trucks and then drive them away. And then, they could not ensure that the aid was delivered to the local Palestinian population, which was starving. So for last, I think 4 weeks or so, they have come up with a new idea where they are establishing distribution points. So earlier there were 4, now I think 2 have been closed. There are only 2 distribution points. And there's a very, very fine-tuned, intricate, operation which takes place where they green light the trucks which have to enter from the Israel side, Gaza, into Gaza. The IDF is supposed to sanitize the entire area before the trucks enter. After that, the trucks enter, then the previous trucks come back, and then the population is notified and they come. But that also is, having poor results. Just yesterday, you must have heard which Gaza Humanitarian Fund has themselves admitted that 20 people died because of a stampede which happened at one of the distribution points. In another instance, there were some Hamas operatives who hid some grenades or assault rifles in their clothing, and they fired at IDF, but in the crossfire, a number of people who had come to take aid got killed. So it's a difficult situation as far as the humanitarian aid is concerned, because for Israel, they think that the aid should definitely go to the poor, starving Gaza population, but their apprehension is that most of the aid is going to Hamas, and then Hamas is, making it a barter thing against what the Palestinian, people require, and they're using it as a tool of exerting power on the Palestinians in Gaza.
But I agree that can be one plausible situation, but Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has also been a death trap. Like a lot of Palestinians have been killed point blank just standing in the line or injured in the line for food. 1 kg of flour, the rate today is what I was reading was $70. Um, the point, which is another point, which was also highlighted by Palestinians in Gaza, that the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the flour, the rice, whatever it gives, it has a chemical product within it in powder form and in tablet form called as oxycodone. Now, oxycodone is a drug that is basically having very negative impact in terms of cognitive, respiratory, and total functioning of
Mental
the
alertness.
alertness of a human being, which could eventually, if consumed inadvertently, would lead to the death. Now, there has been no report or no uh, just as Israel, like today, Netanyahu is talking with the Pope regarding the bombing of the church.
Yeah.
But there has been no accountability of how and why this lethal drug is being distributed in the name of aid to innocent civilians in Gaza. If the idea of Israel is to, if they would think that not all Palestinians are Hamas.
No, I've also heard this story, and there is no way to, corroborate or contradict it. But this is the reality on ground. IDF is using the tool of food and medical aid into Gaza as an instrument to instill fear into the people in Gaza that they should not side with Hamas and they should surrender or agree to relocate. You must have read the input which came 2 days back, where they are again going back to the May 2024 story that they'll set up a tented city near Rafah and house 600,000, what you call Palestinians, which will be driven out from Gaza. So this is why Israel has lost the narrative in this war. The excuse that we are fighting Hamas in built up area, and so we have to bomb the hospitals or schools or UN shelters because they may be an underground tunnel which is leading into it, or starving Gazans because the food may finally lead up to Hamas. To me personally, that is not an acceptable reason or excuse, because as a professional army, I have to find ways and means how to fight the enemy and get over it. Killing civilians, inadvertently or collaterally is not an excuse. And I can give you, example of how Indian Army operated in J&K. The easiest, you can say, obviously, Jammu Kashmir is not equated to Gaza because these are our own people, our own territory, but, terrorists had infested this area. Have you ever heard that the Indian Army has blasted the entire village away just to get 1 or 2 terrorists? No. Despite, incurring casualties on our own, despite cases where terrorists used to hide and linger on and operations used to get extended, Indian Army has never resorted to. So this is not an excuse to me as an soldier in uniform that Hamas is hiding amongst the civilians. Hamas is using civilians as a shield. Hamas is stealing the food from the Gazans. So we need to starve the Gazans. So we need to, if Gazans are getting killed because of Hamas using them as a shield, so be it. We don't care. I mean, that is where Israel lost the narrative. I've documented it very closely that from 7th October till 17th October, the entire world was with Israel in supporting it to counter the threat of Hamas terror attack. It was only after 17th October when initially they denied, but it was later found out that the rocket had been fired, a missile had been fired from Israel and it had landed at Al-Shifa hospital where I think 500 people were killed or something. And thereafter, it has gone on without any stopping. That is where they lost their narrative. From a war which was should have been fought only on a professional front, the war turned into a means of putting population in front of the battle between Hamas and the IDF.
And what was your perception of the Israeli border with Lebanon? How, like, in terms of how have they tried to um, control the penetration by Hezbollah, or what is the role of or strength of Lebanese armed forces in it, or UNIFIL now?
So Lebanese border is quiet now, and IDF and the Lebanese army have ensured that a majority of the Hezbollah cadres are beyond the Litani River, which is about 28-30 kilometers north. So they've got adequate buffer zone between the borders of Israel and where the Litani River is. So Lebanese border is quiet, and I don't think Hezbollah is in a position right now to launch any misadventure. They would slowly try to consolidate, recoup and regroup and, re-equip themselves before, they think of anything. And with Iran in a very bad shape, Hezbollah will find it very difficult how to do all these three things. So Hezbollah, I think, is unlikely to do anything silly, and it is likely to bide its time and try and maintain the peace and tranquility and keep away from the buffer zone that has been notified by Lebanese army.
And when you saw the whatever, I don't know what is the border between Israel and Syria, but with the so-called hypothesis that they are trying to build a David corridor, which includes Golan Heights, because it's a very elevated region that gives them more power of surveillance over the entire area, be it through Jordan to Lebanon to Syria, to every reason. And then also go towards the southern part of Syria to Subeda, where the Druze, in the name of protecting the Druze, Netanyahu has actually stated yesterday that they're going to occupy southern Syria. My first question is, they're not able to safeguard their own IDF soldiers. They're not able to bring back their own hostages. Why are they involved with the Druze question? I do understand that Druze serve in the IDF, but Druze in the occupied Golan Heights and Druze in Suweda, it's not a homogeneous entity. Druze in Lebanon, they have different leaders. Within Syria, they have 3 different factions. So my first question is that, was there any inkling or any hunch that as soon as you leave, there'll be another, intervention started by Israel? And second, why do you think Israel is not thinking about the fatigue of its own soldiers at the basic practical level, continuously 20-21 months?
So, there was no inclination when we were there. In fact, it was moving in the reverse direction, where Israel and Syrian leaders and, they were meeting, and there was a very, very, buzz about Israel and Syria normalization take place, and possibly in September, when the 5th anniversary of Abraham Accord takes place, there might be some kind of, Syria joining the Abraham Accords or something like that. So, it was totally in a reverse direction of what has happened in last 2 days. There was absolutely nothing to say on that. But yes, one thing was very clear, that even there, we were shown the Druze settlements and Druze villages near as also across, and there was a very clear sense that of affinity towards the Druze community and the villages, as if that they are supposed to be their own, and also a sense that if there's a threat to the Druze, then we should be there to protect them. So that sense was very clear. But going headlong into Syria and bombing the GHQ and the Ministry of Defense, absolutely unprovoked and unilateral, and I don't think any Israeli military or a diplomat will be able to defend what happened in Syria in the last 2 days. But the larger question is, why are they doing it? And to my mind, I still have to study more on it, but to my mind, Israel still has a fear that if Syria remains united, and it is, Al-Shara is a very popular entity now, wearing suits and being invited to White House, having lunch, etc. But that may not be the situation always in the long run. And if Syria is united and falls back into what Israel would say wrong hands in the future, and those wrong hands align with Iran again, then it is back to square one. So for them, unstable or a fragmented Syria, which they can control part of it, as we are saying, the David line kind of thing, creating a buffer zone well into the Syrian territory is a preferred option. But, your guess is any good as mine.
And during your entire visit, were you able to, because there's a good number of Israeli Arabs or even Palestinians who have the work permit, especially from the occupied West Bank, especially in Jerusalem, to work. Was there any interaction or any way you could see Israeli Arabs or Palestinians, Muslims or Christians, in your trip?
We didn't have any interaction with anyone except the people who we were meeting, but general sense on the street was normal. We saw Arabs also in Jerusalem specifically, and I didn't see any sense of fear or looking over the shoulder or those kind of things. So and that is that is not something that I could say, but we didn't meet any non Jews or non people who are whom we are not meeting with, because the routine was packed and there was no scope of meeting anybody else much.
And because I've just been to the other side of the border, I've been to West Bank. Are there checkpoints in Israel?
No, I don't see it. No checkpoints. No checkpoints in Tel Aviv or Jerusalem or this side of Israel, main Israel. There were no checkpoints.
So you had complete, like the team had complete fluidity of movement.
Absolutely. Yeah, there were no checkpoints. I mean, I know what you're referring to. Those kind of checkpoints are not there. I think they are basically towards the West Bank or the those territories.
Okay. Anurag is asking a question, which is that, just a second. As mentioned in one of the questions asked about Hamas representing an idea or ideology which survives beyond neutralization of military assets or militant assets, and which continues to attract cadres despite its setbacks. In your view, what would be a credible ideology which can nullify the ideological power of Hamas, if any?
See, for any kind of ideology to emerge, there has to be first unity and reconciliation between the alternate, and the alternate is to, as it stands today, the alternate is the Palestinian Authority. And this is what I said earlier in our discussion also. Till the time Palestinian Authority is able to garner support within the various factions and puts up a united front, which is more stronger and more powerful alternative to Hamas, and duly supported by the others in sense of regional powers, as also Israel, Hamas cannot be dislodged. These kind of attrition warfare can go on for another 20 months, and still we'll be talking the same in your next show 20 months down the line, with more casualties happening on either side, more civilians getting killed. 58,000 would have become 1 lakh by then, and more displacement would have taken place. So, like I said earlier, the military can only, any military in the world can only achieve a military situation where political, solutions can start moving forward. A military cannot deliver a military and a political situation in one go.
Yeah.
So Hamas military capability can be downgraded to an extent that they do not remain a threat in being to launch another October 7th. But thereafter, the political initiatives or they have to take place. Otherwise, remnants of Hamas will always be there. You cannot, eliminate the last person. IDF admits itself that they have destroyed hundreds of kilometers of tunnel, but they are not sure that another hundreds of kilometers of tunnels may not be, still there underground. So, to my mind, Israel will have to take a decision. Maybe they'll, like we talk in terms of politics, maybe Prime Minister Netanyahu will have to seize some opportunity, some success which comes in next few days or weeks, and say, okay, we got this. Maybe some big leader of Hamas or someone, and he said, okay, this was the thing that we wanted, and that is how we are going to end it. And one more interesting thing that has happened in last 48 hours, two pro ultra orthodox Jew parties have left the coalition. So Netanyahu's government is right now, as we speak, a minority government. Because the parliament is in recess due to the summer break, there's nothing going to happen. But that also has to be at the back of the mind that once the summer recess ends and if the two parties withdraw support completely, like we say in India, outside support is also not there, then you might be heading for another snap election in middle of a war. So things are, very, very fluid and fragile, and number of decision points that Israel has to take and take a decision.
And were you able to meet Indian Jews or Indian students or workers who are in Israel? Like 85,000 Indian Jews are there in Israel. 32,000 Indian students and workers work in Israel.
No, we didn't meet any specifically Indian Jew or something like that.
Okay. Ashok Alex is asking that how Israel couldn't foresee October 7 attack in spite of a strong intelligence network. What is your perception regarding this?
See, they themselves have admitted that it was a sense of complacency or an oversight as far as intelligence is concerned, because it was not that intelligence inputs were not there. But the intelligence inputs were coming so regularly and in a stream that it became a routine, and that happens with many intelligence agencies, that once a kind of activity becomes a routine in every situation report, it tends to get buried into the pile of input. So it happens. Secondly, I've written exhaustively about it. A war that was waiting to happen. Number of issues were there. Second was what is happening on the external front. On 19th or 23rd of September, Saudi Arabia and Israel had announced that, the normalization semi-final is over and the final could take place anytime now. On 3rd of October, I think the first time an Israeli minister landed in Riyadh and with a commerce delegation or something. So things are moving very rapidly. And if I can say in some sense, for the Palestinian people, the movement was reaching a point of no return, because had Saudi Arabia and Israel normalized, Palestinian cause was as it is on a back burner for a number of years. So it would have got totally sidelined once Saudi Arabia and Israel had normalized. Second was the kind of attacks or kind of violence that were taking place in the West Bank, including Al-Aqsa mosques, April onwards, etc. So that had diverted the attention of the entire IDF and intelligence agencies towards the West Bank. And, there was a blind spot as far as Gaza and Hamas was concerned. And number of other factors were there, which, I had written about. So it happened.
Yeah. No, like for example, in the Indian context, one can understand it like there's always a difference of working methodology between the Ministry of External Affairs, then RAW or IB, and then the Prime Minister's cabinet, and different kinds of there's a difference between intelligence and there's a difference between inference. But in New York Times, there was a report that was published on 30th of November 2023, detailing that Israeli officials had obtained a 40-page Hamas battle plan, codenamed Jericho Wall, more than 1 year before 7th October 2023 attack. The document outlined a meticulous plan for a large-scale assault, including rocket barrage, drone strikes on security infrastructure, and mass infiltration by gunmen via paragliders, motorcycles, on foot, exactly and precisely the tactics that was used by Hamas on October 7, causing the death of 1,200 innocent civilians and 251 hostages being taken. Israeli military and intelligence at that point of time dismissed it, saying it was aspirational or too ambitious of Hamas. At the same time, it talks about this kind of Frankenstein monster that Hamas itself emerged for Netanyahu because he was letting Qatari funds reach Hamas
Absolutely.
since
Yes, yes.
2009. Purushendra Singh is asking, do you foresee Israel starting a brief altercation with the Houthis, another so-called proxy pocket against Israel? Thanks.
So Israel has, Israel has tried its best. US has tried its best to attack and degrade the Houthis, but the distances and the way Houthis operate make it very difficult for any long-term effect to take place on Houthis from that far, and that is why we saw, European sending a armada of warships in the earlier part of the war. We saw US deploying destroyers to escort the ships, but nothing has worked. US has bombed, Israel has bombed Houthis. They bombed the Al Hudaydah port, which is the a prime route of revenue as far as the ships in and out. But Houthis are have the advantage of being too far away from Israel, as also operating in very primitive manner, which leave very little signature of what they are doing. So I don't think Israel is going to launch a offensive or a deliberate military operation against Houthis. They will keep intercepting Houthi missiles as and when they are fired, and as and when they have clear intelligence input, they would take intermittent aerial attacks to destroy their launchers or weapon caches.
Anurag is asking this question, and this question is rightly, correct to ask from you because you're a very well-respected academic in the Indian think tank circle, and you also have, years of experience in military intelligence. The question which Anurag is asking is, what should India's position be? Because it's like walking on eggshells. How can India, because just today, for example, European Union has imposed sanctions on one Gujarat refinery of India. So there is a certain kind of sanction game that is also played by the West. At the same time, Hamas has not been declared as a terrorist organization by India. We also have been helping Palestinians in humanitarian aid, as
Yes.
our foreign minister, Dr. Jaishankar, has continuously pointed out. Prime Minister Modi talked about Gaza in the latest BRICS summit. So what should be India's role?
India, to my mind, has done absolutely well, and a very, very good fine balancing act. So, when 7th October happened, I think Prime Minister Modi was the first one who had called out this terror attack even before people could realize it. But we have also been very clear on, citing and promoting for a peaceful solution as also a viable two-state solution, which is a principled stand for, number of decades. Israel is a strategic partner, and so in closed door talks, we've been able to tell Israel that what many times it is doing is not correct. When number of civilian casualties are happening, Dr. Jaishankar had given out a statement last year that civilian casualties region. India is very deep and strategic interests in the region as far as energy is concerned, as far as people is concerned, as far as trade is concerned. But India is not in the region. The primary responsibility is of the countries who are in the region, whether it is Saudi Arabia or Egypt or Qatar or UAE. The question to be asked is, what are these countries doing to end this war? India has maintained a very clear position that intra-regional conflicts, interfering in intra-regional conflicts is not a part of its foreign policy.
Yeah.
Hamas and Israel is an intra-regional conflict. The regional players, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, they are the ones who have to intervene. What have they done till now? all that they do is condemn the Israeli strikes whenever they take place. They have expressed solidarity with Iran when the strikes on Iran took place and the conflict took place. But all they have done is stand, and watch from the sidelines.
And there's no
So
skin in
if
the
the
game.
so if the countries in the region who have got direct stakes into peace and tranquility are not acting, how can India be asked these questions where, to my mind, India has done a very fine balancing act?
Yeah. And one interesting and last question is that uh, China, for example, was able to bring together 13 different Palestinian factions
Factions,
together.
yes.
For example, one of them is Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade, which is loosely aligned with Fatah, that is primarily based in West Bank and under the, like West Bank is under the control primarily of Palestinian Authority, and it was formed in 2000. On the other hand, there is Al-Qasim Brigade, which is the more militant Sunni Islamist nationalist part of Hamas in Gaza that
Correct,
has
correct.
been creating the recent barrage of attacks have been from them. Uh, was there conversation within IDF or within the Israeli civilians or the think tanks about different factions? Hamas is just one of them. Are they trying to deal with the other factions also?
See, when they are in Gaza, they have only one set of adversary. So when there's a group of fighters who are lobbing grenade or firing from the assault rifles, there is no way in hell that you can distinguish whether it's a Hamas operative or a Qasim operative or some other operative. So for them to distinguish between these kind of different factions is almost impossible. Yes, I have read some inputs. I don't know how much they are true or not. That and there's a group of Al Shabaab which is now being pushed into Gaza by the Israelis to fight Hamas on its behalf. Whether it is true or not, I've got no idea. But the bottom line is, it's a very dirty battle in Gaza right now, and IDF has got the strength, but Hamas has got the advantage of its own territory, advantage of the fact that it could operate in very small, discrete teams and still have the desired effect on IDF. Like I said, one IDF soldier getting killed is a very, very big, loss for the IDF, which is already fighting in small numbers.
Yeah. And Ashok Alex also adds about Al-Quds Brigade and Palestinian Islamic
Yeah,
Jihad
yeah.
and so many other factions which are there. But with this, sir, we have taken more than the 40 minutes that we asked you. And thank you so much for being so honest regarding your trip, being objective about it, giving a point of view as a scholar, as a military veteran, as a army person, and equating the complicated, hard grassroots level realities for us to understand, and sharing this visit with us. We were able to experience it through your eyes, and we are very thankful for the privilege of your time today.
Thank you, Dr. Shubhda. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And, just to end, I would say that IDF is a very professional army, but they are driven by political objectives, which is not in their hands. And, that is how the gravity of the situation has to be seen in that light. And ultimately, it requires a political solution. It cannot be solved as a military solution, a military, operation.
Yes, I personally think that everyone is a hostage.
Absolutely.
Just don't ask me who is the controller of the hostage. So, yeah. So, thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, everyone, for the privilege of your time. The podcast will be soon available on YouTube. Have a good time. Bye bye.
Thank you.